she confessed to me, "My feelings for you are real, just not the love kind." Her friends praised her raw honesty. My calm reply was just, "I appreciate the transparency." What I didn't tell her was that I'd been planning to propose in 3 weeks, and that single sentence had just saved me from making the biggest mistake of my life. Sometimes the universe protects you in the most unexpected ways. I was reviewing quarterly reports in our shared home office on a Tuesday evening when Amber interrupted my work with what was clearly a rehearsed speech about having real feelings, but not the love kind. I'm a financial consultant, so I process information with the same analytical precision I use for client portfolios, and her words hit me like a comprehensive audit revealing massive structural problems. "Tyler, I need to be completely honest with you about something," she began, standing in the doorway like she was delivering a presentation to the board. "My feelings for you are absolutely real and deep, just not the romantic love kind. I care about you more than almost anyone in my life, but I've realized I'm not in love with you the way you deserve." I looked up from my spreadsheets, watching her face as she continued. "I think we have something beautiful and authentic, but I need to be transparent about what I can actually offer emotionally." The word, transparent, struck me as particularly ironic, considering she'd been living in our downtown loft for 2 years while I paid most of the rent, planned our future, and apparently fell in love alone. "I appreciate the transparency," I replied, returning to my computer screen and continuing to input data like she'd just informed me about a schedule change rather than dismantling our entire relationship. She stood there for another moment, clearly expecting emotional chaos, tears, begging, or at least some kind of dramatic reaction to her brave declaration. Instead, she received a businessman's acknowledgement of updated terms and conditions. "That's it?" she asked, voice rising slightly. "You're not going to say anything else? What would you like me to say?" I asked, genuinely curious while continuing to work on my financial projections. "I appreciate you clarifying the parameters of our relationship. It's helpful information." The confusion on her face was almost amusing. She'd clearly prepared for a much more dramatic scene, probably involving me pleading for her to reconsider or trying to convince her that what we had was special. Instead, I was treating her emotional revelation like a policy update from corporate headquarters. She left the office looking unsettled, immediately calling her book club friends who would later celebrate her emotional maturity and authentic communication, completely unaware that I was already mentally restructuring our entire relationship framework. The man who used to bring her specialty coffee from the downtown cafe every morning and plan surprise weekend getaways was now calculating the exact moment our romantic contract had expired and what that meant for every aspect of our shared domestic economy. I finished my reports that night with unusual focus, my mind surprisingly clear as I began implementing what I would privately call Friend Protocol Alpha. I implemented Friend Protocol Alpha with the systematic precision of a corporate restructuring, treating Amber exactly as I would treat my college buddy Marcus or my sister's friend Qley. Gone were the morning smoothies I used to make with expensive organic ingredients from the farmer's market, replaced by me making only my own breakfast and washing only my own dishes while she stood in the kitchen looking confused about the sudden absence of her usual acai bowl with imported honey. "Are you not making smoothies anymore?" she asked on the 3rd morning, watching me prepare my simple coffee and toast. "I'm making my smoothie," I replied, gesturing to my single serving. "You're welcome to use the blender after I'm done." The look of bewilderment on her face was almost comical, like she couldn't comprehend why her breakfast service had been discontinued. When Amber's luxury BMW started making concerning engine noises the following weekend, she approached me with the same expectation she'd had for the past 2 years. "Tyler, my car's making that weird sound again. Can you take a look at it this Saturday?" I glanced up from my laptop where I was researching investment portfolios. "You should probably contact your mechanic or AAA. I think your membership covers diagnostic services." "But you always figure out what's wrong with it," she protested, clearly not understanding why I was suddenly unavailable for automotive troubleshooting. "I used to do that when we were in a romantic relationship," I explained matter-of-factly. "Friends don't typically provide free car maintenance. I'm sure any qualified mechanic can help you out." Her favorite artisanal soaps disappeared from our shared bathroom, replaced by generic drugstore brands that I now expected her to contribute to purchasing. The expensive shampoo she loved vanished along with the luxury skincare products I'd been restocking monthly. When she asked about the sudden downgrade in bathroom amenities, I explained that I'd been covering those costs as part of our relationship, but since we were now friends, we should split household expenses more equitably. "I didn't realize you were keeping track of soap expenses," she said, sounding genuinely hurt. I wasn't keeping track, I replied. I was just covering them because I thought we were building a future together. Friends typically handle their own personal care products. The shift extended to our entire domestic economy in ways she hadn't anticipated. I stopped picking up her dry cleaning, discontinued her favorite wine subscriptions, and removed her from my Amazon Prime account. When she mentioned wanting to order something online, I suggested she might want to set up her own account since shared delivery benefits seemed more appropriate for couples than friends. Amber initially interpreted these changes as a temporary adjustment period, telling her book club friends that I was processing and would eventually return to normal. She had no idea that I had permanently recalibrated our entire relationship based on her stated parameters, treating her declaration as a binding contract that redefined every aspect of our interaction. The man who used to anticipate her needs and solve her problems before she even asked had transformed into a polite roommate who maintained clear boundaries and expected equal participation in all shared expenses and responsibilities. Amber's birthday arrived 6 weeks after her declaration, and I treated it exactly like any casual friend's birthday, with a simple, "Happy Birthday" text sent at 9:47 a.m. and a $25 gift card to Olive Garden that I picked up during my lunch break. The contrast with previous years was stark and deliberate. Last year, I had orchestrated an elaborate surprise party at the rooftop restaurant where we had our first date, hiring a jazz quartet she loved and flying in her favorite pastry chef from Portland to create a custom cake that cost more than most people's monthly car payments. This year, she received the same level of effort I typically gave to my coworkers' birthdays, polite acknowledgement and a generic gesture that required minimal planning or emotional investment. "Is this really all you're doing for my birthday?" she asked that evening, holding the gift card like it was evidence of some terrible crime. Her voice carried a mixture of disbelief and wounded pride that I found fascinating from an analytical perspective. I thought maybe we could do dinner somewhere nice, or at least celebrate together somehow. I looked up from my laptop where I was reviewing client portfolios, genuinely surprised by her expectation. "We can definitely grab dinner if you want. Want to split the cost of that new Thai place downtown? I heard their pad Thai is excellent." The expression on her face shifted through several emotions: confusion, hurt, then something approaching panic as the full implications of our redefined relationship hit her. "Split the cost? Tyler, it's my birthday." "Right, which is why I got you the gift card," I replied, gesturing toward the Olive Garden card sitting on our coffee table. "That should cover your portion of dinner pretty much anywhere you want to go." Her book club friends who had praised her emotional honesty proved mysteriously unavailable for actual birthday celebration, leaving her to spend the evening alone while I attended my monthly chess club meeting at the community center. When she had hinted about dinner plans earlier, I had genuinely offered to split the cost of takeout, like roommates do, using her own framework about our redefined relationship status. The irony wasn't lost on me that the same friends who had celebrated her brave declaration of authentic feelings were nowhere to be found when she needed actual emotional support. "I can't believe you're treating me like this," she said when I returned from chess club around 10 p.m., finding her sitting on our couch surrounded by the remnants of a solo dinner she'd ordered from DoorDash. "Like what exactly?" I asked, hanging up my jacket and settling into my reading chair with a financial planning book I'd been working through. "Like I don't matter to you at all anymore." I considered her words carefully, the way I would analyze a complex investment scenario. "That's not accurate, Amber. I'm treating you exactly how you asked to be treated, as someone you have real feelings for, just not the love kind. Friends matter to me, but they don't receive romantic gestures, elaborate celebrations, or financial subsidies. This is what authentic friendship looks like." The stark contrast between this birthday and previous years when I had rented entire venues, coordinated with her family, and spent weeks planning surprise elements finally began to crack her confidence in her decision. She stared at me for a long moment, probably realizing for the first time that her declaration had permanent consequences that extended far beyond just changing the label on our relationship. The woman who had praised herself for emotional maturity was discovering that maturity came with adult responsibilities she hadn't anticipated. The hidden financial infrastructure of our relationship became brutally apparent over the following month when I systematically removed Amber from every shared account, membership, and service that I had been covering as part of our romantic partnership. I started with the health insurance, calmly explaining that my company's premium plan allowed coverage for spouses and dependents, but not for friends who had explicitly clarified their non-romantic feelings. "You're removing me from your health insurance?" she asked, staring at the official notification letter I'd placed on the kitchen counter next to her morning coffee. "The annual enrollment period is next month, so I needed to update my beneficiaries and coverage," I explained while reviewing my own insurance options on my laptop. "You'll need to either get coverage through your pottery studio or look into marketplace plans. I can send you some links to help you compare options if you'd like." Her part-time pottery studio, which barely generated $1,500 in monthly revenue, had never offered health benefits, something that hadn't mattered when she was covered under my comprehensive plan that cost me an additional $420 monthly. Next came the Costco membership, my Amazon Prime account, and the family cell phone plan that had been saving her nearly $200 each month. "I don't understand why you're being so systematic about this," she said, watching me update account information on multiple websites while she stood behind my chair like a supervisor reviewing my work. "These are just practical adjustments," I replied, clicking through another account settings page. I was covering these expenses because I thought we were building a shared financial future. "Since you've clarified that we're friends, it makes sense to separate our accounts and let each person handle their own memberships and services." The luxury gym membership disappeared along with the high-end streaming services and monthly wine club deliveries that I had been treating as relationship investments rather than keeping a detailed ledger. When her favorite yoga studio charged her credit card $350 for the monthly unlimited package she'd been enjoying, reality hit with mathematical precision. "I had no idea you were paying for all of this," she admitted, sitting across from me at our dining table while reviewing a stack of bills that had suddenly become her responsibility. "I wasn't paying for things," I corrected, looking up from my own financial planning spreadsheet. "I was investing in our shared lifestyle because I thought we were partners building something together. There's a significant difference between charity and investment." Her credit card, which she had assumed was her own account, turned out to be a secondary card on my excellent credit profile, something I discovered when reviewing my monthly statements. Canceling it left her scrambling to establish her own financial identity with her limited income and virtually non-existent credit history. "Tyler, my credit score is apparently 540, she said, staring at her phone screen in disbelief after applying for her first independent credit card. "How is that even possible?" "You've never actually built credit in your own name," I explained, continuing to work on my quarterly budget projections. "The card you've been using was attached to my account, so all the positive payment history was building my credit, not yours. You'll need to start with a secured card or maybe ask your bank about starter options." When her car insurance premium jumped to $412 monthly without my multi-vehicle discount, the true cost of her honest feelings declaration began hitting her bank account with relentless mathematical precision. I had been subsidizing her lifestyle to the tune of over $3,000 monthly, treating it as an investment in our shared future rather than keeping score, and she was discovering that independence came with a price tag she had never calculated. The woman who had praised herself for emotional authenticity was learning that authentic adult relationships required authentic adult financial responsibility. Desperate to provoke any emotional reaction that would prove I still cared about her romantically, Amber began staging increasingly dramatic scenarios designed to crack my new friendship-only demeanor. She started leaving her pottery projects strategically placed throughout our shared workspace, beautiful ceramic pieces that she knew I had always admired, hoping I would comment on them the way I used to when I would spend 20 minutes analyzing her artistic techniques and encouraging her creative development. Instead, I simply moved them to appropriate storage areas when they interfered with my own work, treating them like any roommate would handle someone else's belongings left in common spaces. "You used to love talking about my art," she said one evening, watching me carefully relocate a glazed vase she had positioned directly in front of my computer monitor. "It's beautiful work," I replied, setting it on the designated art shelf we had established for her pieces. "I'm sure your pottery studio customers appreciate your skill." The clinical tone of my response, like I was commenting on a stranger's work at a gallery opening, visibly frustrated her. She began playing our old anniversary playlist on repeat through the house speakers, filling our loft with songs that had soundtracked romantic dinners, weekend trips, and quiet evenings when we used to plan our future together. I responded by purchasing noise-canceling headphones and continuing my work without acknowledging the musical manipulation, treating her emotional soundtrack like background noise that had no relevance to my current activities. "Don't you remember what that song means to us?" she asked during a particularly obvious attempt when she played the song from our first dance at her sister's wedding. "I remember it was playing at Rachel's wedding," I replied, not looking up from my financial reports. "Nice song. I should probably get some work done though." When she, accidentally, started wearing my dress shirts around the house, the same ones she used to borrow for lazy Sunday mornings when we would cook breakfast together and read the newspaper in bed, I responded with the practical concern of a responsible roommate. "You've got several of my shirts," I mentioned casually while doing laundry. "I'll need them back for work this week. Let me know if you need help sorting your clothes from mine." Her attempt at recreating our first date outfit, complete with the blue dress she knew I had always loved and the perfume she had worn that night 2 years ago, resulted in me complimenting her on looking nice for whatever plans you have tonight, before returning to my financial podcasts with the same enthusiasm I would show for a neighbor's dinner preparations. When she broke down crying about feeling lonely and disconnected, claiming that our friendship wasn't providing the emotional support she needed, I responded with the same helpful detachment I would offer to any friend experiencing relationship difficulties. "Have you considered joining some local hobby groups?" I suggested, pausing my podcast and giving her my full attention the way I would for any friend asking for advice. "There's a pottery collective downtown that might be good for networking, and I think the community center has social activities for people looking to expand their social circle. You might also want to consider getting a therapeutic pet if you're feeling isolated." The complete absence of jealousy, possessiveness, or any attempt to solve her loneliness by resuming our romantic relationship forced Amber to confront the reality that she had successfully eliminated every trace of romantic investment from our interaction. My suggestions were genuinely helpful and delivered with the caring tone of a good friend, but they contained no hint that I saw myself as the solution to her emotional needs or that I was affected by her distress in any personal way. When our downtown loft lease came up for renewal 4 months after Amber's declaration, I calmly announced over breakfast that I had purchased a 1-bedroom condo in the financial district, with closing scheduled for the following month. The news hit her like a financial audit revealing catastrophic losses, her coffee mug freezing halfway to her lips as she processed what this meant for her housing situation. "You bought a place without telling me?" she asked, her voice climbing toward panic as the implications became clear. "Without even discussing it?" I looked up from the real estate documents I was reviewing, genuinely surprised by her reaction. "I mentioned I was looking at condos a few weeks ago when you asked about my weekend plans. I didn't realize you needed updates on my personal financial decisions." The distinction was crucial. I had treated the condo purchase exactly like any major decision that friends might share with each other, mentioning it casually without seeking her input or approval because her opinion was no longer relevant to my housing choices. "But what about our lease here? What about me?" she asked, gesturing around the loft that we had shared for 2 years, where she had assumed we would continue living indefinitely despite having redefined our relationship. "Your name isn't on the lease," I replied, returning to my paperwork. "I've already given the landlord notice that I won't be renewing. You'll need to decide whether you want to take over the lease yourself or find alternative housing. I can provide a reference if you need one for rental applications." Her frantic confession came tumbling out that evening after she had spent the day calculating rental costs and realizing that the loft's $3,000 monthly rent was completely beyond her pottery studio income. "Tyler, I think I made a terrible mistake," she said, sitting across from me at our dining table while I organized my moving timeline spreadsheet. "I've been thinking about what I said, about my feelings, and I realize I was wrong. I do love you. I really do love you, and I want us to try again." I saved my spreadsheet and gave her my full attention, the way I would for any friend experiencing a major life crisis. "It sounds like you're dealing with a lot of stress right now," I replied with genuine concern. "Major life transitions often make people reconsider past decisions. That's completely normal and understandable." The clinical tone of my response, treating her romantic revelation like a psychological phenomenon rather than a personal declaration, made her try a more direct approach. I'm saying I want to be with you romantically again. I want us to move to the new place together and go back to how things were. I considered her words carefully, applying the same analytical thinking I used for client consultations. I appreciate you sharing your feelings, but my capacity for romantic love requires mutual reciprocation from the beginning, I explained patiently. Since you clearly stated your limitations 6 months ago, I adapted permanently to respect your boundaries. Friendship is what you offered, and friendship is what we have. When she begged me to, just give us another chance, I presented her with a detailed breakdown of utilities, rent deposits, and moving costs she would need to handle independently, along with a list of affordable apartments in her actual price range that I had researched during my lunch break. I want to make sure your transition goes smoothly, I said, handing her the folder of rental listings. I've highlighted the ones that allow pets in case you decide to get that therapeutic companion we discussed. The folder represented hours of research, genuine effort to help her succeed independently, and absolutely zero consideration of resuming our romantic relationship. She stared at the apartment listings like they were evidence of her complete failure to reclaim what she had voluntarily discarded, finally understanding that my friendship came with helpful practical support but no emotional vulnerability or romantic investment. My final gesture on moving day involved presenting Amber with an elegant mahogany jewelry box that I had commissioned from a local craftsman, creating a moment of desperate hope that flickered across her face like candlelight before being extinguished by reality. "Tyler, what is this?" she asked, her hands trembling slightly as she accepted the beautifully polished box, probably imagining that I was about to propose or at least offer some romantic reconciliation that would restore her access to the life she had taken for granted. "Just a practical gift to help with your transition," I replied, watching her carefully open the hinged lid to reveal not an engagement ring, but keys to a property management company office along with a lease agreement for a studio apartment I had already secured and paid first month's rent for as what I termed a friendship gesture. The studio was in a decent neighborhood within her budget, close to public transportation, and had good natural light for her pottery work. I had spent considerable time researching options that would support her success as an independent adult. "You found me an apartment?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper as she examined the lease documents with the same expression someone might wear while receiving a terminal diagnosis. "I wanted to ensure your smooth transition into independent living," I explained with the genuine care of a concerned friend helping someone navigate a difficult life change. "The studio has excellent lighting for your art, and the rent is well within your pottery income range. I've also included contact information for a few local pottery collectives that might help with networking and additional income opportunities." Her face cycled through confusion, gratitude, and crushing disappointment as she realized that I had systematically eliminated every trace of romantic dependency, infrastructure, and future planning from our relationship while maintaining perfect adherence to her stated preferences for friendship-only interaction. The apartment represented thoughtful practical support delivered with the emotional distance of a social worker helping a client achieve housing stability. "This is really it then," she said, watching me load the last of my belongings into my new Tesla Model S, a purchase I had made without consulting her since friends don't make joint financial decisions or seek approval for major life choices. "You're really moving on completely." I paused in my packing to give her my full attention, recognizing that she was processing the finality of our changed relationship. "I moved on 6 months ago when you clarified your feelings," I replied with the patient tone I would use to explain basic financial concepts to a confused client. "I've been respecting your boundaries ever since, treating you exactly as you asked to be treated, as someone you have real feelings for, just not the love kind." The irony of her situation became crystal clear in that moment. She had successfully achieved exactly what she had requested, a relationship with someone who wasn't romantically invested in her emotional well-being, someone who treated her with friendly respect but no passionate attachment or future planning. As I drove away from the loft where we had lived together for 2 years, I reflected on the engagement ring that was now returned to the jeweler, The proposal speech I had been rehearsing, and the European honeymoon I had been secretly planning before her declaration of emotional limitations had saved me from making a catastrophic investment in someone who saw me as convenient rather than essential. The fund I had earmarked for our wedding was now financing my solo trip to Japan, where I planned to spend 3 weeks exploring financial markets, learning about investment strategies, and enjoying the company of people who appreciated my presence rather than merely tolerating it in exchange for lifestyle subsidies. 6 months later, mutual friends would tell me that Amber had moved back with her parents after struggling to maintain her independent lifestyle, that she frequently mentioned our relationship as the best thing she had ever lost, and that she had finally understood the difference between having someone who loved her and having someone who simply enjoyed her company while she happened to be around.